Hello, and welcome to the NIAB Talks about Summer 2022 video. Now you may be confused, because this is the first video we've had like this, and it may be confusing to see this, and I'm trying to understand, what's going on. Well, allow me to perfectly clarify what's happening right now. Essentially what this video is it's similar to my previous talk about videos, the stuff like the Spy Family one, the Baki one, all that. It's similar to those, but this time around, we're doing it for specifically a whole season. That's how we're doing it now. That way I don't have to make multiple videos on things I want to talk about, and thus it interrupts stuff like the reviews, the get-intos, all that, right? All sorts of other videos that I want to get out on the channel. It's a lot easier if we just condense it all into this one video. And of course, if I want to speak about something more, we'll make a video on it, of course. But otherwise, it could be perfectly just fit in here, and therefore I don't have to do anything further. I don't have to make some sort of shorter video that we just slap out there. We just do it right here. Now I will note that with this video, certain things I will talk about, as well as with future versions of these videos, there may be some spoiler sections in here and everything. I will leave timestamps in both the comments and the description of what sections will be the not spoiler talk of a certain topic and what sections will be, so you'll be able to easily skip ahead. I'll even give a 10-second warning before, of course, you have to skip ahead. Should work out perfectly, and yeah, I hope you're all ready for what I have to speak about, because we got, of course, a lot of topics to talk about today, and I'm very excited to speak my mind about all of these. But enjoy! So I have this thing with a few friends of mine where we do this sort of anime exchange type of thing. Sometimes it's not even anime, which is actually something I'll get to later. But we have this certain thing we like to do of an anime exchange with each other. And, we were all sharing some stuff here and there and everywhere, right? One of them suggested Hunter x Hunter, which we watched that, and I decently enjoyed that. I'll make a video on that soon. I mean, I plan on doing that plus Yu Yu Hakusho, since I watched that close to the same amount of time, and I'll just combine a whole big video and talk about my thoughts on all that. One of them suggested ReZero, and if you're familiar with this channel, or even you just take a simple little look at the videos, it should be obvious what happened there. But when it got to my turn, I personally suggested Devilman Crybaby. Now, I've already seen the series. In fact, I've already read the manga. I did that years ago. But here's the thing. It had been a while since I'd seen Crybaby, and if I'm gonna be real, for a large portion of time, I thought the manga was way better. I don't necessarily know what fully made me think that overall. It might have just been I liked maybe character designs more, because I'm not really huge on some of the anime designs and certain things like that. Maybe I felt like it was better with a gore factor or something like that. But I had that opinion of thinking the manga was better than the anime. Now, of course, you're free to feel that opinion as well, right? I'm not going to judge you for that. You'll just have certain preferences and everything. In fact, I do actually know one of my friends who does prefer the manga over the anime. But I rewatched it with them, of course, as we were exchanging it, and it made me realize, wow, Crybaby is way better than I thought. So back when I first watched it, I wasn't really that huge on it or anything. I mean, I did really love it, right? It definitely made my top 10 animes. But it wasn't necessarily something that felt like it was doing anything drastic to me, right? It didn't feel like there was some huge story with characters really building well going on. But then I rewatched it and realized, oh wow, this is actually really good. There's so many subtle things I missed here and there that perfectly just display what's going to happen throughout it. And characters that a lot of the characters I really do love. They actually helped build on them more than they were in the manga. A lot of characters in the manga kind of just felt like they were there for the most part, right? They were a supporting role, and even then, they did maybe one or two things. Whereas, you know, the main focuses of Akira and Ryo, they were like the actual main focuses, but even they didn't get much character-wise and everything. Whereas the anime manages to at least give everybody something and make you like really feel emotional inside, whether it's, you know, sad, happy, all this shit. It works out really well, and I really enjoy that. It's kind of shocking to me, really, because it's like, man, for the longest while I somehow couldn't see all this. I couldn't see the fact that these characters actually had some depth to them, right? There was some proper moments there where it's like, it actually felt like these characters were almost human, I'm gonna say, which is weird to say, but you know what I mean, right? It's interesting. I don't know how I never realized that before, but it made me realize that I fucking love the anime. Like, holy shit, it is really, really good. But yeah, I'm glad I rewatched it, because that made me realize that this was a pretty damn good adaptation. And I get that some people aren't going to enjoy it. In fact, I know a lot of people don't necessarily enjoy it, but I overall think it's definitely worth a shot if you haven't already seen it. It's a great series, and for something that's as short as 10 episodes, it does tell a very big story with some great characters there and everything, and I think it works out for that really well. Also, I did have a pal who I mentioned to that I was going to make a review of it back when I did watch it, and then I mentioned I was going to make a comparison after I read the manga, and I didn't end up doing that. But hey, I'm doing this now, and I think this overall counts, because I don't really feel like I need to give a proper review or anything of this. I feel like I can just pretty much mention, hey, this anime is way better than I thought, and the manga is still great, but I don't think the manga was as good as the anime. I mean, the manga, I will say, obviously started a whole lot of things that were drastic for like manga in general, right? It did things that no other mangas had done. I should preface that the Devilman manga came out in the 1970s. It is an old series. It is a very old series. But, you know, it did a lot of new things. And while that is great, of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that that holds up in terms of structure of story and all this and characters to this day. Whereas this adaptation actually feels really good with all that shit, right? It's essentially the foundation for making something like this, and I can appreciate it for that, as well as also it just generally looks really good. I really love Go Nagai's art style. But anyways, to that pal, yeah, hey, if you're seeing this, I'm finally doing a video on it. That's all I have to really mention to him. But yeah, overall, I'm very glad I got to rewatch this series, and I'm glad my friends, of course, very much enjoyed it. So that was actually where I was going to finish this section of Devilman Talk, but I felt like I should actually fully talk about the characters and everything and the changes there with them that I really like. And of course this leads into the spoiler section of all this, which honestly there wasn't going to be at first, but you know, I feel that I have to speak about this. So first off, we have our main man of Akira, and he changes pretty well from the manga to the anime. There's still a lot that's similar there, right? He acts very similar. There's still a overall same motive and everything, but he's a lot more violent, I want to say, with the manga, right? He doesn't necessarily feel as nice as he is sometimes with the anime, especially certain moments with the anime, like for example when he's crying in the locker room to one of the dudes who, you know, there was all this shit going on with all these rumors and everything, right? And like about him and the relationship he had and all that, right? And he starts crying towards that person. Manga Akira isn't necessarily like that. He's a lot more, you know, violent, aggressive, just a general asshole in a way, right? There's still some nice bits to him, but he's more like that. Whereas the anime Akira is at least nicer, but there is some, you know, things here and there where he's a little bit of an asshole, but for the most part, he is nicer, and this does lead to some better moments with him. some more emotional scenes, stuff like that, right? Really works well for him. Another big change, I mean, a really, really big change, honestly, is Miki. Specifically Miki Makimura. Or Makimura, sorry. But she is a huge change, like, for the anime. Because, if we're being real, in the original, she sucked. Like, she was not that great of a character. She kind of just was around Akira sometimes, and would just say shit and all this stuff. Like, she really didn't amount to much as a character, despite being one of the main focuses, and a character they bring back a whole lot throughout, like, spin-offs and everything. She was kind of just there, and it was a little bit shocking. Whereas, you know, here with the anime, wow, she is, honest to God, my favorite character in the, like, whole series, essentially, just from, like, this, right, from her anime version. She is fantastic here. She feels like this proper, supportive, super nice character who, yeah, like, still has morals and everything, of course, right? She's not nice to the degree of, like, not understanding certain things that are right and wrong and all that, but it's to a point, of course, where, you know, she learns that Akira is a, like, demon, essentially, right? He's a devil, or has one inside him, and she's still fine with it, because had that been a problem, she would have gotten killed, right? That's what she understands, is had he not been himself, she would have been dead long ago. But the fact that she's still alive, it means that he's still him, and, you know, it really shows how nice she is and everything, and it makes it hurt way more than the manga when you get to episode 9 and everything just happens. And I will say one painful thing is I didn't get to experience it this way, and that's kind of unfortunate, but from the manga to the anime, it actually seems like the anime is almost taking a different route with episode 9, right? Because with the manga, she dies in the house. She dies in the house with, like, the others and everything. That's where it happens. But the anime decides to, like, essentially get her to escape the house with Miko, which I can't wait to talk about Miko also. And, you know, after they've escaped, it's like, oh, they're running. Oh shit, she might actually manage to escape. And then she dies, like, shortly after. It's a good, you know, pull of the rug just right under, right? It's really good for that. I do actually appreciate them doing that. I wish I got to properly experience that, because for me, you know, I was just watching it for the first time and then reading it, and I went, oh, that happened earlier, as well as certain other deaths and everything happening earlier, right? Also, something I want to mention is I do like Miki's family being kind of the way they are, almost, right? Like, super religious, super supportive of each other and all this shit, because it of course leads to emotional scenes the episode before and stuff like that. It's very, very enjoyable. I do like that they made that change. Also interesting to make Taro a Devilman, because this of course leads into, you know, that whole scene with, I think, episode 8, where, you know, his father is having trouble actually trying to kill him. That is a really fucking great scene. It's super emotional. It's fucking painful as shit, and I love that they did that with him. It's great. It also means that he doesn't just, like, where, you know, in the manga, where he goes upstairs to check what's going on upstairs, right, to make sure all the windows are locked and everything, and the next time you see him, he is headless. It's not like that. At least now there's an actual proper powerful scene attached to it, so I definitely like it for that. And then, of course, like I was saying, I'm sorry about Miko. Miko in the manga, despite how much she also occasionally gets brought up into other spin-offs, not always, but she is there in a few, she really didn't amount to much, which is weird, because she gets, like, I don't want to say proper focus, but the way they panel the manga and everything, it feels like they are trying to focus on her. Like, she's meant to be one of the main focuses there. You see her twice. 3 times, maybe. Whereas the anime, makes her this bigger character. This whole thing of she's kind of almost feels like she's always being compared to like Miki and all this, right? She feels like she's inferior, all this, eventually leading up to the whole her becoming a Devilman scene. And then we go from there, right? She speaks to Miki, all sorts of interactions, speaking to other people like Akira and the other dude who I'm going to be real, I forgot the name of, despite him being pretty important. All this stuff, like, and leading into the final scene of her killing herself, essentially, as to not attack people, right? To prove, in a way, her innocence, and also that she wants to protect Miki, right? Like, she has full trust and all this. It's really great that they did this for her. I also kind of like this ability more, the whole spider type of thing, right? It's very simple. It's her turning into a spider, like, yeah. But I do like it over the whole acid tits and cooch. You know, that was a little bit odd of an ability. It's interesting, I guess. It's a little bit odd, though. But the spider is cool. I like the spider a lot. Despite being horribly afraid of spiders, this one's actually pretty cool. I'm not that much afraid of it. Also, another addition for this anime that's kind of similar to the manga, like at least there are notes there that are similar, is the dudes who are always rapping throughout the episodes and everything. Technically speaking, there's characters that are like them in the manga, not really. It's more so the school bullies that kind of take on their role, right? Or I guess they take on the school bullies role, but like from a different angle, right? They play the similar role there. But the difference is, the school bullies were kind of just assholes at the start, and then Akira beat them up, and then they're like, oh, well, now we're Akira's pal, yeah. The rapping dudes, well, two things about them. One, their songs get more and more, you know, like they paint a bigger picture to the narrative going on and everything as each episode passes. It starts off simple, but then, you know, we hit more and more notes that are similar to the actual plot going on and stuff like that. On top of the fact that they actually feel a little bit more built on than the school bullies, that it actually feels like there's more there. They lost their buddy, who just so happened to be dating Miko, and that dude randomly disappeared. He's died during something that happened, right, is what they know. But for, like, Miko, it's she went to a party with him, or like a club rather, and there was a devil there, and all that shit went down. She became a Devilman, but he died, and she took his sunglasses, and that leads into what essentially is the reason that one of the dudes betrays like the gang and everything, and like Miko and all them. It's just because he sees these sunglasses in her bag. It's such a subtle note, but it's so good, right? I love that. It's really great. I'm glad they at least did that for those characters. Overall, that's really the changes they made. Actually, I almost forgot. Rio, they did change up a bit more, right? They made him a little bit more intriguing and everything on some of the details surrounding him, as well as, you know, he kind of pushes the plot more than he did before. But I will say I do have a slight problem with him constantly recording shit. The reason I have that problem is because it really gives away the fact that he's the villain. You kind of get a little bit of the feeling, I would say, early on, just from how he is, how his demeanor is, all that. But as soon as he starts recording, at least I felt this way, like when I was first watching, and even rewatching, I still felt like that, of course. But as soon as he starts recording shit that Akira's doing, it really feels like he's just he's trying to be the villain, right? Or he's setting it up that way, and it's like, I kind of wish you didn't do that, so that I didn't know, so that it was a big surprise by the point we got to that, or as we got, you know, closer and closer with the details, and it made me realize, wait, is he the villain? Right? Kind of wish there was less of the whole recording. He's the only one who I have a small problem with there. I also don't really like his anime design. I'm fine with pretty much most of the anime designs. In fact, I love Miki's and I love Miko's. Although I do really like Miko's original outfit from the manga. But he's the only one who I see the anime design for, and I go, damn, you really had to give the man a bowl cut. But, you know what? it's okay. He's still definitely better than he is in the manga, right? He got some good improvements there. I just do wish he didn't have the whole recording stuff, and also, yeah, not the bowl cut. Hey, so remember when I mentioned that anime exchange a few moments ago? So anyways, I started watching Beastars, and I was a little bit off-put by the look of it, but, you know, a good friend of mine suggested it, and I trusted his overall opinion. And after watching it, yeah, it's pretty good. It's almost shocking to see the sort of animal look to everything. I mean, they are animals, but it's almost shocking to see the animal look to the series. But this series actually is pretty damn good, and tells a almost very interesting real story of just overall what it's like in a way for schools in Japan and everything. From what I understand, it's very similar to the show. I mean, it's similar across other places in the world, like schools and everything, right? It's definitely similar there, but there's certain things, of course, here that are very much taken from that. Now, I will say, fully watching season 1, there's some interesting stuff there. It's definitely exploring that, plus exploring this overall topic of prey and predator and all this shit, right? Or more so, just carnivores and herbivores and all that stuff, right? There's certain things to that that relate to these characters, of course, depending on, you know, what animal they are and everything. But it's interesting. It's an addition to, on top of this overall school life that's going on with characters, and this, you know, bullying that's happening here and there. Maybe there's some other stuff, right? Maybe there's some love interest, all this shit, right? It's like, it's a proper school thing with that on top. I like that. I actually do like that a decent bit, that it's kind of managing to blend both of these things together, and it's doing really well with that. Also, additional note, I'm just going to mention, because I'm a fan of one series, this is written by the daughter of the Baki creator, which is kind of shocking to me, because I really love Baki, and it's almost weird going from something like that, of just dudes beating the ever-living shit out of each other, to extreme degrees, and somehow they're not dying, for the most part, and then we go right to this with his daughter. It's not necessarily bad, it's just interesting to go from that to this. So I feel like if I have to get my thoughts out of the way, I really just do have to go into spoilers. So allow me to explain how I overall felt with season 1 and going through that. So season 1's interesting because, you know, like I mentioned, we had this whole school life type of thing, but the whole carnivore and herbivore thing on top of that. And we learned that, like, carnivores kind of get this almost urged sometimes, right? It's like a drug almost. In fact, they do a really weird way of showing it, but I get what they're going for, and I actually kind of like it. Even if it's a little bit odd, of the scent going into the, like, nose of our main character, who, I'm gonna be real, it's been a bit since I've watched it, so I don't fully remember his name. But we get the scent overall going into his nose and everything, and it's like almost, sometimes it's used for, like, tracking down stuff and everything, right? But it's almost this, like, urge that it creates, right? It's like a drug and all this, and there's like a beastly side to him in a way and everything. Like, this is kind of a thing with the carnivores, and it's interesting. I like that a lot because it shows this good contrast between the character, right? And it's like, it's not necessarily something they want, but it's like an addiction, right? I like that a lot. But then we learn more and more throughout this that it's like our main character wants to eat the woman over here, Haru. I remember her name. I sometimes forget it. Lugosi. That's what it was. I remember now. Took me a little bit. I just remembered it started with an L. Figured it out. Lugosi overall kind of wants to eat her, like, with the beastly type of side, but the other side of him you know, loves her and all that, right? He gets this love towards her, and I kind of like that. There's a neat contrast here, right? Once again, it's neat. But then we have Louis over here. Pretty sure that's how his name is said. I don't think it's like Louise or anything. I think it's Louis because that's how they say it. It's funny that him, certain other character, and I think I heard a third one. I think there was something I actually went through or something, or I think it was Fist of the North Star. I think I was going through Fist of the North Star again because of certain things I'll get into. And I've heard the name Louis 3 times now. It's really funny that within that like span of time, right, that like week or two, I managed to hear that name that many times in completely different series. It's a little bit funny. But we have Louis here. There's also some kind of, you know, relationship with Haru here and everything, right? There's something there between them. Then we have, I think Juno was her name down there, and she likes Lugosi and all this, right? There's a neat connection with all of them, right? It's this like big spider web of all this shit, right? So it creates some tension. Then there's also the actual like bad stuff, right? Not bad writing wise or anything. I mean like bad in terms of, oh, what's going on, right? We have the lion Yakuza just there. They're a thing, and they're pretty fucking scary, right? And then we have all sorts of other shit. There was a murder at the school, and people were trying to figure out what's going on with that and everything, right? There's a lot going on in terms of these events and all that. I mean, like I mentioned, Lugosi's, you know, trying to resist the urge to eat Haru and all that. And as we get further in, right, there's a proper relationship built between the two of them. Also, he's a little bit afraid of sex. Not necessarily, well, actually, no, he is, kind of, because, you know, you see it more later on. But there's a lot of shit that really happens with Season 1, and I really like it. And then there's Season 2, and I still like Season 2. I don't think it was as strong as Season 1, but I would definitely say it's still strong. Now, from what I've heard, there was some stuff cut out. That's kind of unfortunate if true. But it's still overall good. I kind of like that there's this detective feel to it, right? Lugosi is now almost taking on this detective role to figure out what's going on with that whole murder that happened and everything. And we're seeing more, of course, with Haru and everything. And Louis is now the leader of the Lion Yakuza, and he had to eat meat to become a part of it. And there's an actual connection built with them, like they fully trust him and everything. And it's sad. And like he leaves by the end, but it's just like, it's sad. It's genuinely it really fucking hurts. But, you know, we overall are trying to get to this point, and then we learn about Bearman, who is overall good friends with the dude who died. But it's almost this weird thing of like, he feels like he's still there, he feels like he's still friends with him and talking to him and all this, but he's ate him. And in fact, I don't even think that conversation that he had with him actually happened, if I recall correctly. I think that was him just imagining it. I could be wrong on that. But it's really fucking interesting. I do like Season 2 a lot. I especially like the final, I'm going to say, battle and everything, right? And what happens there. I like that. It's a good twist to it overall, right? And in a way to give Lugosi this whole thing he's been trained towards, to not eat meat, right? To being, like, to stay away from it, that he's been doing throughout the season. But at the same time, you know, it also gives him, like, by trusting in Louis and everything, and trusting in himself and all that, he's able to get this, like, I'm going to say power up and everything, and beat Bearman down, and perfectly just solve this problem that has occurred. I like it a lot. I do wish it was as strong as Season 1 in a way, or at least stronger, something like that. But you know what? It works out. I think it was still great, and I'm still very glad I got into the series. I'm glad I gave it a try. I was a little bit off-put by the looks of things, but you know what? It was worth it. So Trigun's an interesting series. A lot of the early stuff kind of starts off very comedic in a way. There is some serious notes to it and everything, but a lot of it is just very overall goofy little adventures of our character here, Vash, right? There's a lot of just comedic shit there. However, it does get to a more serious note with bigger plot importance and everything during about the second half of it. And I do like that, right? It's interesting to see a show go from this very silly, just overall normal comedic western type of show to, yeah, okay, here's a bunch of like shit you weren't expecting and all this, and like a whole lot of bigger stuff, right? I obviously really can't say too much without going into spoilers, so this is really all I can say for the not spoiler section. But I will say it is very nice, and I would recommend checking it out. But anyways, yeah, I feel like we should get onto the spoiler section so I can actually speak about things. So starting off, I really did like this show a whole lot, just right off the bat, right? It's very silly, it's very, like, overall kind of funny and everything, right? Vash is kind of a dumbass and everything, right? And he's getting hit a whole lot, he's getting hurt, all this, right? And people don't believe that he's the big man, right? The humanoid, like, typhoon and all that, right? All that, Vash the Stampede, man with, like, 60 billion bounty and all that. Nobody believes it's him, because it's like, why would you, right? Look at how he's acting and all that shit, right? And what's happening with him doesn't make sense. But then we get to about the second half of the show, right? And I was already really liking it just because of the comedic shit and everything. But then we get to the second half, and a big fucking cannon comes out of his arm, and it just shoots out a massive laser and all this. And throughout the show, towns are getting destroyed, but for kind of goofy reasons, right? And that's what he's known for, because he's the humanoid typhoon. This type of shit tends to happen with him. But that's happening because of goofy reasons. You see this shit, and then it's like, oh, could this have been happening before, right? Like this? Because yeah, that would certainly destroy a town and kill some people, right? That would certainly happen. But the thing is with Vash, of course, that really does help add to this, is he's very much against killing people, right? Hurting them, even then, isn't super great, but it's like, you know what? If you can hurt them and treat them after, or something like that, right? Like, bare minimum, right? If he has to, he'll shoot somebody, but he'll make sure to, like, patch them up or something, right? Like, pretty much make sure they don't die. He's very much against that, and they go into that, of course, later. I'll even get into that. But something like this is definitely a huge turn for him in a way, right? Because it's like, okay, now you've destroyed this entire city. No clue if anybody was really around or anything like that. And one subtle detail I like here that really did send a chill like down my spine. It was really fucking good to see. It was like horrifying in a way. Maybe not too horrifying, of course, but it was definitely like, oh shit, right? Is during the opening, you know, it's showing Vash walking and shooting and all that. But there's a change during the second half of it. It's the same footage and everything, but when it gets to the part where it's showing Vash walking, and it then shows the screen of like, oh, Vash the Stampede, bounty of 60 million, or 60 billion rather, it out of nowhere changes in the second half to like emergency, evacuate immediately, like humanoid typhoon inbound or something like that, right? Something along the lines of that, like evacuate immediately, humanoid typhoon inbound. And that was like, I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about that. It's like, fuck, that just subtle change in the opening gives you all the direction you need to know that like, oh, this is going somewhere, right? We're getting to bigger things here. And there's a whole lot that happens after this point that's like, holy shit, right? Vash is trying to get to his brother, right? Knives. We learn about their backstory type of stuff, right? And everything. And it's really interesting to see because Knives views these people as inferior, but he's also not very used to pain and everything like that, right? So it's like getting hurt really affects him, whereas somebody like Vash is kind of used to it, right? This has been happening with him a whole lot and everything, but he doesn't want to kill, whereas Knives has no problem, right? They create perfect contrasts of each other. And then we have the woman who took care of both of them and everything, right? Who kind of sits as this, like, maybe not middle ground, because she doesn't want people to kill either. Part of the reason why Vash doesn't kill is because of her Rem. But, you know, we get this middle ground with her, and she almost is able to, like, speak to both of them, even if Knives isn't really taking any of her messages to heart and everything. Like, Knives is just fucking over the people in the ship that they were in and all that, right? It's a neat backstory. I do really like it. I did really enjoy watching it. And then we have Wolf, I believe is his name. He has a bigger name than that, but Wolf is from what I remember, I think, in his name, right? Dude with the giant cross, that he's a priest. And throughout the show, there's been this kind of mystery about him, because there's been some people who know him and everything like that, and it's confusing. And then it turns out this big organization of people that were working for Knives, right? He was one of them, but he wasn't trying to necessarily kill Vash in a way and everything. But then it gets to the point where, you know, he might have to, and all this shit happens, and he's helping out Vash, and then he does die, and he does have a kind of sad death where he's in a church. Of course he's gonna die in a church, and I think one of the last things he says is that he doesn't want to die or something like that. And it's just like, it's sad to see somebody saying that and then passing on, right? Especially when they're like such a cool character and everything, and you're starting to really enjoy them. That hurts. And there's also an episode near the end that really got me. Like, I was almost concerned with what was going to happen. And it's one of the dudes who's part of the organization is trying to get Vash to kill him, right? That's the only option he has at that point. But he has all these, like, sort of people hypnotized in such a way that they'll kill the two female characters there. I know one of them's Millie, and I don't remember the other one's name. I kind of forgot it. But they'll essentially kill those two, right, if Vash can't kill him. And it's a legitimate tense moment because it keeps going and going and going. And I was, like, so concerned as to what the fuck was gonna go on, because it's like, shit, if he doesn't kill them, they're dead. I wouldn't be shocked if they do die, right? Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they do die in this very moment. But then, in order to prevent that, Vash has to kill this dude. He has to go against what, like, you know, he doesn't want to do this shit, right? He has to go against his own morals and everything. And that was a tense moment. And I mean, he does end up shooting the guy, but it's like, man, that was really good. They had me on the edge of my seat there. The final battle is also pretty damn cool. I do like that moment a whole lot. It's a good fight between Knives and Vash, and I do like the constant, like, one of the moments where they take out all their bullets and they're putting, like, them back and everything, or, like, I think they put, like, 2 or 3 of them back or something like that, and they're trying to pull the trigger. Or actually, I think they put one. I think they put 1 bullet back. They put 1 in, try and shoot, and every time it's, like, empty until they get to the very last one, I think, like that, or something like that. But yeah, that moment's really cool. I do like that fight overall. I will say, I think it does end a little bit too short, at least for me. That fight kind of just happens and then it ends, and that's it. The fight's over and it finishes there. And I mean, I get why in a way, but it's a little bit disappointing that that's all we could really get out of that. I do wish there was a bit more there, but it's definitely really good. I would say the whole series was really good. I'm glad I got into it, and I'm excited for Stampede, right? I'm very excited to see Stampede, the remake of the whole series. I want to see how well they do with that. It looks like they'll have really good CGI, like really good. So that should be nice. But yeah, Trigun was definitely worth a watch.
I'm aware that a lot of you don't like me, but I don't care about it.
So over the summer, I had a decent bit of Fist of the North Star related stuff. There was the Get Into, which if you haven't seen already, I highly recommend it. It should be right up there. The card right there. But we had the Get Into, where I expressed how much I love this series and why you should get into it. You know, all these intriguing details here and there. I actually had a friend of mine who started watching the series and everything, and I got to experience it with him. That's also partially why I mentioned the whole Louis thing earlier, because there's a character in the series named that. But I also did one more thing. Now, I've been a fan of the series for a long while, and I have seen Fist of the Blue Sky. Here's the thing. I saw the anime, but specifically Regenesis, and then I also saw Season 2 of Regenesis. I would like to make a video on these one day to express how different they are from the actual series. Because, yeah, this and the anime are not that similar. Now, obviously, the anime and the manga follow the same plot overall. But there's a lot of stuff they change, and over the course of the summer, I actually read Fist of the Blue Sky. You know, the proper thing I'm supposed to do. And it was definitely different than the anime. In fact, I enjoyed it a whole lot more. I guess I can't really do this without actually just making this whole thing a spoiler section, so apologies if you didn't really want to hear spoilers and all that and everything. It's unfortunate, but this entire thing is just going to be a spoiler section. But it's interesting, really, because the anime kind of stops at a point, at least for the first part, not Regenesis, just for the first part, where, oh, here's Kenshiro and Pan, and now they're together again, right? They're properly together and they're a couple. But then we stop before a whole lot of stuff. We stop before Zhongwu. The reason Zhongwu is important is he's pretty much the main villain of this whole thing. He is just Nazi Rao. So there's that. There's, I think what was his name? I want to say just it's with a Y. It's with a Y. Don't fully remember his name. It's weird because I actually really like his design and his fighting style. But he is in Regenesis. But it's weird because he's not properly put in there, and so is like Faye, who shows up there and is kind of Fist of the Blue Sky's version of Ray. But he's different. He's also not necessarily part of the same, school that Ray is part of. And he also has a brother and all this shit. There's a lot of details they just take out, and it's really weird, and I definitely want to make a big video on this. But overall, to just explain how I feel about the manga, it was very enjoyable. I liked a lot of the action there and everything. If I had to say anything, I will say it absolutely had me pleased with the action. Usually Fist of the North Star is like that, or like the series rather, right, as a collective thing. Especially Tetsuo Ohara's art. I love that shit to death. But, going into it, I was like, I'm not sure, because I watched the original anime, and the sound effects they used weren't great, and also animation-wise, it was kind of mediocre. But, with this, I was reading it, and I'm like, whoa, this is, like, actually fucking sick. All this shit, right? Like, all these battles that are happening and stuff. There's some, like, funny jokes in here occasionally and all this, right? And overall, I mean, plot-wise, there's nothing too huge. I will say, I love the expansion of the, Hokuto history, right? The history of Hokuto, all this stuff involving it. The people in the way back, the original, successors and all that, right? It's really interesting to learn that. Overall, the actual stuff about, the mafia and everything there, it's okay, right? I don't find it anything huge. It's interesting, I guess, but they just spout so much shit about it everywhere, like the constant text bubbles and all that really I didn't care all too much. It was just like, okay, that's what's happening, and that explains, this or that, or anything that was going on. But the history of Hokuto stuff I really fucking enjoyed. I really enjoyed, Zong, seeing him for the first time and learning more about him. I did actually really enjoy him, other than the fact that, the people he's associated with aren't the best, but you know what? He's pretty damn cool. I honestly kind of like that he just goes bald by the end. right? Perfectly becoming a successor to his master and all that. And he essentially, like, the big reveal in a way of, like, essentially this would become Hokuto Ryuken, which, I mean, Fist of the North Star 2 stuff isn't spectacular, but it still is cool. So, you know, it's neat to learn that about him and all that. Overall, I did actually very much enjoy this. Even if, you know, the Mafia stuff and all that isn't super interesting, I was still very glad I got to read this. Because, man, it's pretty fucking good. And unfortunately, the Regenesis manga, which is a continuation of this, not the manga of the anime or anything like that, it's a continuation of this, the proper manga, I think is only like 12 chapters in or something like that. And the last chapter came out like a year ago, I'm pretty sure. So it's kind of unfortunate, but I don't know if we're getting more. We might. That'd be exciting. Maybe I'll come back to this video or like this type of video at a later point and I'll be able to speak about that. But, you know, for now, this is just where we're at. It's unfortunate, but hey, maybe we'll be back. And if not, who cares? You know what? This was still enjoyable, and I'm glad I got to go through it. So part of the anime exchange that I mentioned earlier. How am I supposed to take this seriously? Look at the background I decided to put for this. I'm supposed to sit here and mention the anime exchange shit I was talking about to this in the background. Look at this. How am I supposed to do that? So part of the anime / show exchange that, you know, me and my friends had, part of that was watching Breaking Bad. Now, I have never seen it, and one of my other good friends have never seen it. But, you know, we got to view it via this, and obviously I've been meaning to get to it at some point. It's a really popular series, of course, and I've heard a lot of good shit. And you know what? It was nice that we finally got to go through it via this anime exchange, right? I was glad I got to experience it, and I'm sure my good friend is glad he got to experience it for this. I'm not done yet. Should mention that. We're about halfway. We're at season 3. So, you know, we're kind of almost there. Obviously, we have to do Better Call Saul after that. But you know what? It's nice that we're halfway through this. But going through this much already, I will say, yeah, it's been very enjoyable. It's interesting, right? I do very much like shows like this. It's a little bit odd to say, but stuff like, for example, The Sopranos. I didn't watch very much of it. I've been watching it with a friend, and even then, it was only a few episodes that we have watched and everything. But watching that, I don't know, there's something about the direction and the way just everything goes with it and all that, that I was very enthralled by all the shit going on. And it's the same for this. I was very much enjoying this, and I still am, of course. It's interesting, and I'm very much enjoying how characters are progressing and all that, right? I enjoy seeing Walt become this character that he is at the start, right? This proper father to his family and everything, and to the point where I'm at now, where he's still kind of trying to be that, but there's some cracks there, right? It feels like there's some cracks there. There's characters like, you know, Skylar, who also is kind of similar like that at the start, but then of course, you know, she starts cracking to this point, and now there's some tension between the two of them and all this, right? I'm really loving Jesse, of course, a whole lot. I think he might almost be one of my favorite characters because his progression just so far, like, a whole episode could go by. It could be one singular episode, and somehow that makes a huge difference for like how he is as a character. It's insane. There's so many episodes where I've just gone through and I've been like, wow, this feels like he feels completely different now, right? To see what he's doing and all this and what's happening to him and all that. It's really interesting. I'm really loving him. He might be my favorite character. I don't know, a little bit tied with the next character I'm going to mention of Hank, where Hank kind of starts off, you know, as this funny like cop going around being all chill with his coworkers. But to the point I'm at now, he's still, trying to be that, but there's very clearly this stress and tension being put on him after everything that's occurred and all that, right? It's a big change from the start to where I'm at now, right? I feel like this is probably one of the strongest points of the show, is taking these characters from what they start off as and molding them into what they become later, right? It's like, really weird analogy, but it's like, you're taking a little ball of Play-Doh and here's an entire line of it, right? And you're taking that ball of Play-Doh and you're putting it on the line and you're just rolling it across. But that line is all different colors and everything, all different things, right? And you're just rolling it across and you're just slowly but surely seeing it change. I'm really loving it for that, right? It is taking these characters and slowly but surely throughout the episodes, or I guess in Jesse's case it's molding it faster, just molding all of them into the characters they'll become later. I'm very much enjoying that. I'm also just overall enjoying the plot of it, of course. I really like what's going on and this progression that's leading up, I'm sure, to bigger places for Walt and all them, right? I do know some things about a little bit later, not an insane amount, but I do know some things. But I am interested to see more about that. And obviously, another great part of this show is, as I get further, I get to finally understand every single image, GIF, video, all that shit that I've seen. I finally get to understand where they come from properly and all that. So that's pretty great. I get to see all that, and now I have the knowledge of that. So after taking a large break from all the Pre-Zero reading reviews I had been doing, as soon as I was done with the big Arc 7 video, I felt like it was obviously time to delve into other series and just see what there is, right? I've been doing that a lot as of late, right? Specifically, I started last year and it's been building up till this year, although it's been kind of halted a bit because we've been doing those Pre-Zero reviews. But I felt like now was the perfect time to delve into other stuff. And part of that was me realizing, hey, there's some big stuff coming out with new seasons and all this stuff during, the fall. So I should probably get into some stuff there. And part of that, of course, just so happened to be Mob Psycho, along with two other things we'll talk about later near the end of this video. But Mob Psycho was one of them. Now, I had never seen it before, despite pretty much all of my friends seeing it. I had never seen it before. So, that was, a bit odd for me compared to them, right? It's like all of them talking about it and I'm kind of the one just sitting there like, neat. But, I decided to take that jump and let's see how good this is. And I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I will say I enjoyed the second season more than the first. The first is definitely still good, and I feel like the first really starts off strong. However, I think later points of it do get to this point where it feels like stuff's kind of just happening in a way, right? It's not necessarily bad, it was still decently entertaining. But some of the later stuff of season 1 kind of felt like, okay, it doesn't feel as strong as it was when it started. But there was still some good there, and I did like the last few episodes of it. And then we get to season 2, and I very much enjoyed season 2, to the point that it made me sit there and think, wow, I enjoyed season 1 a whole lot, I would say. Other than that, bit there, but even then I still enjoyed that bit for a decent bit. But seeing season 2, I went through that whole thing and thought to myself, man, is this a top show for me? Which I don't think it is, at least not at the moment. I'll have to see with the next season. But there's so much good shit with season 2, and I don't think there's enough here to warrant an actual spoiler section. But I will say, with season 2, just the progression of Mob and certain scenes there, especially, I'm going to say the scene of Season 2, right? The scene of Season 2. I'm going to say, like, the provocation is what I'm going to call it, right? Hopefully you understand what I'm talking about. That scene hit me differently. I wasn't expecting that sort of escalation of things. It was really intense. But Mob as a character really grew super well with this season. Reagan, I really started to enjoy with this season. He might actually be my favorite in the show, just because he was already doing real well, right, for me. I was enjoying him a whole lot. But this season really helped build him more and structure him in such a way that he was very enjoyable, right? And it felt like there was some proper notes to him there, that I'll say, right? I definitely enjoyed that a whole lot. And there's a lot of great other characters there. I'm glad a lot of the other side characters got more building as we went on and everything, right? It's pretty damn nice. I do like this season a lot, and I hope that the next season is somehow even better, because if it is, it really is going to be a top show for me. And hey, at bare minimum, I hope it's just as good as the 2 seasons that are already out, right? I hope I still really enjoy it a whole lot. I'm very excited to see what comes out of this show. So I got a very interesting birthday gift this year, and that was I got to go to the movies and watch Dragon Ball Super Hero. Now, I'm not going to talk about it too much here, because I plan on doing a proper roasty cast type of video where we just speak about it and say our opinions overall. But I will give a short synopsis of how I feel about it. Pretty good. I do think it was a movie that overall did better for me than something like Battle of Gods and Resurrection F. Very easy to do better than Resurrection F, but Battle of Gods, as much as I'm not huge on the whole god forms and everything of Super, in fact, I'm very much not huge on Super. There are certain things I like, and there are certain things I don't. And a lot of the don't is way bigger than the like, right? But, I will say, Battle of Gods, despite not liking the god forms and everything, it felt like a great return to the series. I mean, it had been, what, like 10 years since we got something out of the series? Something like that. So, it felt like a very nice return to things. Funny enough, now that I'm thinking about it, it had been like 10 years, roughly, since something like that. And speaking as both a Dragon Ball fan and also a Godzilla fan, where with Godzilla, the last movie we had for a while was Final Wars, and then we got 2014. You know, I got to experience that type of feeling twice, which was very nice. But Superheroes, a really fun, great movie. I actually didn't mind some of the things that were there that I usually mind throughout the series, right? It felt better. There were some things I didn't like, but for the most part, I think this movie actually did pretty damn well. I don't think it's better than Brawly, though. I really did enjoy Brawly, even if, you know, like I said, there's certain things about Super I don't like. I did really very much enjoy Brawly. Brawly was a fucking grand experience. But Superhero was still fantastic. I would absolutely love to watch it again. It was pretty good. I'm glad that a proper thing out of Super was made that I could enjoy fully and not have too many critiques about, because I really didn't have too much that I actually hated. It was just pretty good, but it didn't, of course, succeed something like Brawly, but that's fine. You know, second place is still very good. But yeah, I'll speak more about this on the broadcast, but for now, it's good.
That just makes you a beta cuck.
I also did this over the summer. That was pretty cool. I did this costume from ReZero that some of you may know, others may not, and I will not say his name as to not give away any spoilers. Although something interesting to note is there weren't actually that many ReZero cosplays at all that I saw there. But I shit you not, one of the extremely few that I saw was a Satella cosplay, and I will say I very much did want to take a picture with them, especially given certain things, right? But unfortunately, they were way too far away, and it was kind of unfortunate. But hey, I did in fact see them. it completely, like, I was absolutely sure it was them. But that was pretty damn cool. Other than that, though, here's some cool shit I got. You may have noticed it, actually. A few things here that was in some of the reviews previously and all that. But, yeah, I got some of this stuff. That's pretty neat, right? And, yeah, this was fun. That's all I wanted to share for this. Can you tell I'm excited to talk about this? Okay, so I'm going to try and speak about not spoiler stuff as much as I can because I have a lot I want to discuss here. Chainsaw Man. I decided to get into the series, and I've been planning on doing so for a while now. It kind of started off when I was talking to a good friend of mine while we were watching the last few episodes of Arc 4 of ReZero, and he had mentioned to me certain things about the series that he really loved. Mainly this big focus on real love and fake love, stuff like that. He gave a good synopsis of that got me very interested. Now, I had been interested kind of for a while. I had seen all sorts of things online, and I was like, oh wow, I should possibly get into that at some point. It seems like something right up my alley. It is. Very much is. It is definitely one of my favorite series now. Not super high up at the moment. Now, I've only seen up to part 1 of the series. I don't really plan on going further until, you know, each part is pretty much done. But I've only seen up to part 1. Now, that said, I really do enjoy part 1. Not super high up in my favorite series list, right? It's possibly in like the number 9, maybe number 10 spot, something like that. But it's still very good. And I think when the anime fully gets adapted in October and all that shit, I'm gonna be a just massive fan of what I'm seeing and everything. Overall, I think it's a really fucking good series, and the whole love type of stuff is really strong with it. It's a lot of gore to it and everything, which I'm already a fan of Devilman, so this resonated with me pretty damn well, right? There was a lot there that I could easily love because of shit similar to Devilman and all that. Now, with that said, that's really all I can say for the non-spoiler stuff, because I want to say a lot. So I don't know what I expected going into this series, because, man, there's a whole lot I could speak about. This progression of things, right? All sorts of stuff with the gun devil, other devils that want the chainsaw devil dead, all this stuff with contracts and everything. I was already super invested with just stuff like that. But then we get our characters and stuff like that, right? Denji, who just feels like a dumbass, but at the same time, it's interesting to see stuff involving him because, you know, certain things. One, he doesn't really care about, you know, humans overall, right? He doesn't really seem to care. Everything's kind of viewed as equal in a way, with the exception of some animals, because I have seen some stuff, but, you know, some animals he'll be willing to protect and all that, but overall he sees things as equals. And there's also the whole thing with him of he hasn't really lived a proper life. A lot of it has just been in this poor, absolute dump of a place, with the only thing he had being a Pochita, his little dog devil with a big old chainsaw on the front, which is the chainsaw devil essentially. But it's this, you know, interesting thing to see with him of he's barely lived a proper life, so getting something that's actually generally just normal for anybody is just a paradise for him. I really like seeing that. Power. I hate, in a way, to have the popular character be my favorite, right? Just because it almost feels like I'm kind of like bandwagoning, right? I'm not, because I will usually have a proper reason for why I have that popular character. It's just a little bit, troublesome and worrying to possibly have to mention why I like those characters so much, because some people might just see that as I have the popular character as my favorite, just because they're the popular one. Now, with that out of the way, Power is absolutely my favorite. She is fantastic, and I do love a whole lot about her. Going from, the start, where we learn that she doesn't like devils nor humans, right? Also, something interesting to note is, the one thing she did truly love was her cat. And it makes an interesting contrast with Denji, because Denji, became friends with this, and that thing's the devil. But Power was the devil, and Meowie was, just a normal cat. So it makes an interesting contrast with them, and it makes sense on why, they get along so well later on, right? They're perfect mirrors of each other. And, man, there's just a lot to like about her, or at least for me. The blood power is interesting. I like these blood weapons that she can do and everything, right? That's really cool. I like that. It's a little bit funny to like. It's a little bit silly. But I like that one of her character traits is just lying, gaslighting, all that type of shit, right? Just being an asshole. She's a little bit not smart, right? But that perfectly matches with Denji. And man, there's just a lot. I really do love a lot about her, and it's this progression as we get further, where she builds a friendship with Denji and Aki and all this, that it's like, man, she's becoming a real great character. And then that happens, and I'm very upset. And I knew it was going to happen. In fact, I had seen manga panels of something that was extremely similar, but it wasn't the same setting necessarily. But with the way the art style was and everything, it made me assume, oh, I guess that's what happens. I've been spoiled, unfortunately. So you can imagine my shock when I actually got to the big moment, and it didn't play out the same way. I was like, oh shit, wait, that wasn't official? Oh. And, that shocked me. Still upset me, because it's like, damn, well, there she goes. But then, she comes back out of nowhere, and we get this proper moment where, she's trying to grab Denji and run out of there. And she's saying shit like, I'm the first president, and all that, which is a great, just full callback to her saying all this shit about how she wants to win a Nobel Prize just to shove it in people's faces, or become the president for all sorts of reasons and all that shit, right? It's just great throwback to all that. But then we get the, last moment where she's talking with Denji, and it does hurt a whole lot, and it obviously builds a proper goal for what's going to happen later. But anyways, to talk about other characters and not gloat about the one I enjoy so much, we have Aki, who also is pretty damn good. I like his powers, they're neat. I also love that he has this interesting contract that essentially is telling him when he's gonna die, how it's gonna be from all this, right? How painful it's gonna be and all this. And this progression of he wants to find the Gun Devil because of what it did to his family and everything. And then he ends up becoming it and all this shit, and then we get shown the flashback but with Denji and all them. And that moment's great. It hurts, but it's great. And then we have, well, now, I was well aware that she was going to be the villain. There was a big demeanor with her and everything that it just kind of felt like, yeah, that's definitely going to be our main villain. But there were also certain things that I remember seeing. I mean, I mentioned the shit with Power that I saw, So, obviously, I was kind of well aware that something was going to happen with her. But I will say, there were things I didn't expect. First of all, Control Devil. Didn't even expect that at all. That is really fucking powerful. Two, I didn't realize as a result of that how many people she really was manipulating. It made sense, of course, why people were writing down that shit on paper and everything, right? And speaking to each other via paper and all sorts of very simple ways to speak to each other, right? Without actually talking, without doing it anything digital, right? All that. It makes sense once you see all that, right? But it's like, man, there's so much manipulation and shit, and like, oh, it makes sense why this stuff was so easy for her. And like, everything just adds up once you see that, right? I do really enjoy that. And it's also this interesting twist for her, right? Of she didn't really give a shit about Denji, she was just more so interested in the Chainsaw Devil. That's what she's a fan of, right? So that's what she really wanted to see. All sorts of stuff that really does make her out to be a proper great villain. And yeah, this kind of does almost show that like proper fake love that my friend had mentioned. And I do like that by the end, you know, she essentially doesn't exist anymore, but the Control Devil still does in this new person who I forgot the name of. But you know, they're a kid, and now Denji's going to take care of this kid. I like that because it's like, oh shit, alright, there's not really a redemption for her necessarily, but, you know, there's something more here with the actual, you know, devil she's associated with, and technically you could almost by proxy say it's her. It's not really, but we could. And it creates this interesting dynamic for Denji and now this new kid, right? We'll see him being, I guess, a parent. That's what he's going to be now, I guess, is a parent to this kid. Now, I will say, I have seen a few things later, and from what I understand, we haven't really seen much of him interacting with that kid, but that's fine. I'm sure we'll see it at some point. But I will say I'm very interested to see where we go from here. That's about all I really want to mention for this, because I feel like I go on and on and on about the stuff I really love. But overall, I did really enjoy this. Final notes, I guess. The Darkness Devil, I think it was pretty damn cool. I like that whole area. Rize was very nice. I wish she stayed alive. She actually, you know, even if she was trying to kill Denji for a certain point, she did try to go on a date with him later, and her getting fucked over after that was sad. I also feel bad for the Angel Devil, because, damn, they realized way too late what was going on, and that's unfortunate. And, yeah, also I really like the design of the sword guy, right? The guy with the big ol', I'm gonna say conductor, army, whatever we want to say, hat. I like that. I like that guy. I like his design. It's very nice. That's all I want to say about this. Let's move on to the final section of the video. Part of the video. So I've experienced a decent bit of the big shonen series. I mean, I grew up on Dragon Ball. I started One Piece about a year ago in the summer, funny enough, and I'm pretty much almost caught up now. I do actually know about literally everything that happens in the manga, like up to date, but you know, anime wise, I'm a decent way through Wano. But Naruto, you know, I've gotten a few episodes into, and then I kind of just put it on hold for a while, and I'll get back to that eventually. You know, maybe you'll see it in a future talk about video. But there was one I was very intrigued by, one that was getting a new season soon, of course, with the anime, which had been like 10 years from what I understand since they had anything. And, you know, all sorts of shit. I've been hearing shit about some people saying it's not good, but some people saying it's fantastic, and all this. And I wanted to experience it myself. I'm of course talking about Bleach. So over the summer, of course, I started Bleach. And I will say, just starting it off, it was already fantastic. I really did enjoy it at the start, right? Here's the thing that's sometimes a problem with a lot of shows, and sometimes the big shonen type of series in general. Starting them off isn't always super easy. I will say for something like One Piece, it starts off interesting, and like a little bit funny and goofy and all this shit. But it doesn't really get like super fantastic, I would say, until the stuff with like Sanji and Don Krieg and Arlong and all that, right? It doesn't feel like it's properly, you know, just something till there. I got about, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 episodes into Bleach, something like that, and I was already super invested. This series is very entertaining, at least for me, and just right off from the first arc, right? It's an interesting thing of, oh, here's Ichigo. He's now become a Soul Reaper thanks to Rukia, and Rukia gives her powers to him, all this. Now he has to fight Hollows, and then, oh, one of the Hollows killed his mom. That's interesting. I guess he has to get to the point where he kills that Hollow. All this type of stuff. Something's going on with Rukia, and then he has to try and help her out with that. And then one of the big Hollows appear that I actually don't remember the name for, because they sometimes introduce very confusing to remember names for certain things in the series. But there's one of them, and he manages to strike it pretty well to the point that it leaves. And then we get to this point later where Rukia is greeted by a dude named Renji and a dude named Byakuya, and they're essentially going to take her back because there's something going on in the Soul Society and all that. And then Ichigo tries to stop them with his friend Ishida and all this, and there's a big fight between Ichigo and Renji, and Ichigo starts doing really well, but then Byakuya stops him and injures him pretty bad, to the point that he won't be able to use, you know, the whole Soul Reaper powers or anything. But then one of the dudes who's there in this, you know, little house that's helping out Rukia starts helping out Ichigo, and from there, you know, we get to this point where eventually Ichigo gets his powers back. It's a really interesting thing for the first arc, but it's very, you know, simple on where we're going from there. Is like, oh, now he has to fight all these Hollows, and then he's gonna fight these dudes, and then he has to help Rukia. And, you know, it's overall basic for a first arc, but it is still very entertaining and good. At least I would say so. I was enjoying Ichigo a whole lot. You know, Rukia was definitely becoming my favorite, and she might be. At this point, she might be. I'm still trying to figure it out. But, you know, there's a lot of good candidates for that. One of them being Chad, right? I really do love Chad a whole lot. His progression is really good, as well as just as a character. He's really nice. All this stuff about, like, not hurting people in certain scenarios and all this shit, right? I do like that a lot. Inoue is this very kind girl that, I mean, as of the current arc I'm in, I'm liking where they're going with her. But, you know, very early on with just the first arc and Soul Society, she does overall, you know, sit there as the funny, nice character, but doesn't become anything too big. There's Ishida, who's very interesting, right? I love his powers, and I love this whole Quincy type of stuff with him. But more so, I want to talk about the Soul Society arc here, right? I gave a very brief summary of the first arc because I feel as though it's definitely still pretty good, but it's definitely a first arc, right? It's nothing too huge. But then we get to the Soul Society arc, and oh my lord, I can see why people say that this is probably the best arc in the series. I am still very much enjoying the current arc that I'm on of the Espada stuff, right? I'm really enjoying that a whole lot. But Soul Society definitely feels like it might be the best arc, because wow, the amount of shit that happens here, and like learning more about the captains, learning more about the you know, other people that like are the underlings and all that stuff, right? And they're like second in command and all this, right? Learning about them, their past, whatever it may be, right? The past of Rukia, all this. There's so much there that's really fucking great. And it makes this interesting thing with all of them where it's like, oh, each of them have a unique thing to their blades and all this, right? Like the Zanpakutos, they all have this thing called Bankai, and then Ichigo has the one Bankai, and then, you know, oh, now we all have this big power up to the sword, and we get to see this, and it's like, it creates something interesting for each of the characters, and actually, you know, makes seeing their fights a whole lot cooler. On top of the fact that a lot of the captains and everything, I think, are very fucking interesting. I'm really enjoying Kenpachi. I don't remember his name fully. I think it started with an H, but he's the kid. He's the young prodigy captain. He's really damn cool. Byakuya is also pretty fucking cool. Aizen. Man! Aizen. He is also a possible candidate for one of my favorite characters, if not my favorite, because fuck, this whole, like, just pulling you from under the rug and all this shit that they do with him and everything, and it's just making him so cool and all this. He's really fucking good. I'm liking him a whole lot. And I don't know, there's a lot of the captains that I feel really interesting. Now, I'm not sure about later points because I'm only at a certain amount of the Espada stuff, but I will say at the current moment with the captains, some of them do have some building and others don't, and that's kind of unfortunate, but I am interested to see if the others actually get something there. If not, it's okay. It's just I'm definitely intrigued to see, oh, well, those people get some more to them, right? But I will say Soul Society's a really fucking good arc. And I didn't realize it was split into two when I was first, you know, going through it, which made me realize, fuck, I have to finish it. And then I finished it and I was very satisfied. There was a whole lot there I really enjoyed. And learning about the stuff of, oh, you can make holos out of people, but make them human and all this shit with this certain tool. All this, right? Learning about Rukia's past and how she feels, and that definitely made her, like, stronger for being a character who might be my favorite, right? It's just all this stuff about her past and everything. There was a lot here that I really liked. Oh, Renji, of course. Renji fighting Ichigo and being uncertain about, like, everything going on with Rukia, because he essentially, you know, grew up beside her in a way and all that, and now he's trying to, like, fight back against Byakuya, and it doesn't really amount to much. He still gets fucked, right? Like, he's fucked over all that. And then also later Byakuya saving Rukia and all that. There's a lot there with Soul Society that I really fucking like, and I can definitely see why a lot of people consider it the peak of the series. It's something that is structured so well and gives this interesting, you know, takes with all these characters and all that, and it shows interesting backstories to them, certain things, right, their swords, all that, their fighting styles, their beliefs, all this, that it does bring me to a point that it's like, wow, this arc is really strong. This pretty much elevates the series really high, to the point that, while I may not think, you know, future arcs will be as good, this will definitely help support the series in general for my overall opinion, because I'll probably still really enjoy the later arcs, I assume, and therefore this will definitely take things, you know, higher, and who knows, maybe this will become one of my favorite series once I'm done the whole thing. But for now, that's as far as we go for today's journey of Bleach. We'll definitely be doing this more with future Talks About videos, because, I mean, we're not done, right? With the fall one, we'll most likely go through what's overall left of the anime, and then I'm sure with the winter one or something, we'll go with, I think, the first part of 4 of the last season, because from what I understand, that's being split up into 4 parts, and I don't really want to watch it as it's coming out, but I will watch it per part. I'm willing to do that. So, who knows, maybe that's what we'll do from there. But for right now, the series is definitely really strong, and I'm excited to talk about it more on future Talk About videos. This shit's good.
Hey guys, just wanted to add on to this section by saying that I have a new channel called NIAB where I'll be posting reactions to all sorts of shows. The biggest part of this though being that I'll also be reaching to the 1,000-year blood war of Bleach on this channel, so if you are interested in that, be sure to tap the card on the top right or click the link in the description to go directly to it. Alright, time for the last part of the video.
But thank you all for joining us on a nice talk about video today. There was a whole lot of interesting topics here, weren't there? It was shockingly a lot of stuff related to things happening next month, and therefore they might be brought up again because obviously there's anime adaptations and everything. But you know, that stuff will possibly come again, but it was nice to talk about them here. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. Take care, have yourselves a great night. Also, if you haven't already, please vote on this nice, very cool tournament poll right here. Pick a character from there, and just yeah, help decide who will show up in the big final tourney of this year, the Grand Arnold Rumble. Okay, that's it. Thank you all for listening, and yeah, see you next time.
Square.